On today's show, the Cavs have finally signed somebody. That 14th roster spot is Thomas Bryant, now a member of the team. We'll talk about that addition, plus some more news and notes from Kenny Atkinson and Koby Altman talking on Tuesday. That's all straight ahead on today's edition of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? My name is Danny Cunningham, and you might know me from my time covering the Cleveland Cavaliers, places like my Substack, The Inside Shot, Cleveland Magazine, 92.3 The Fan, and a number of other stops along the way. And I just want to say thank you to you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else. Make sure to drop us a 5-star rating, leave us a nice review, and of course, be a friend. Tell a friend about the show. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. And if you're watching us on YouTube as we get started, do us a favor. Hit the thumbs up button for us. Click subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We got some news a little bit after the second episode of Tuesday dropped, as the Cavs have signed Thomas Bryant to a contract, putting him on the roster, and that gives the Cavaliers 14 guys that are on standard contracts for this season. We talked all summer about who's going to be the last roster spot, and the last roster spot, the way that the Cavs operate, is actually the 14th guy, not the 15th guy. I would be stunned if the Cavs go into the regular season with a full 15-man roster. I think that the roster they have right now is the roster that they're going in with. So Thomas Bryant is the last guy that has been added on. And I do think that this is a solid signing, and I think it tells us a number of things. And Thomas Bryant, on the surface, a very good fourth big. Like, I don't know that you're going to find many teams out there that their fourth big man is better than Thomas Bryant. Now, I also think if we are in a situation where if the Cavs are in the postseason or in a big spot in the regular season and Thomas Bryant is out there, something probably went wrong. Like, that is not part of the plan. He is a piece that is there for depth. It is a little bit, I think, of Larry Nance Jr. insurance, which is fair considering that he doesn't exactly have the cleanest bill of health throughout his career. But I also look at it and say he can do a lot of different things. Now, he's not somebody that I think you could play alongside all of the other bigs. Like, I don't think you can play Thomas Bryant and Jarrett Allen together the way that I think you could play Larry Nance Jr. and Jarrett Allen together. I do think you can play him and Evan Mobley. I think Evan Mobley can play with anybody on the roster, which is a very important thing to know. But one of the things that is valuable about Thomas Bryant is that he is, to some extent, a threat from three-point range. Now, he's not some sniper. He's not Karl Anthony Towns. Heck, he's not even Evan Mobley from beyond the arc. But he is, on a low volume, somebody that is at least capable of making shots beyond the arc. And I think that is a very valuable skill for him as a fourth big man to have. And I look at this and say, if something happens to Larry Nance, can Thomas Bryant take up some of those minutes? I think he can. I think that is part of the beauty of the signing. But I also look at it and say, Thomas Bryant last year averaged 15 minutes a game in 56 games with the Indiana Pacers. I would be surprised if this year he plays that many games and averages that many minutes per game. I don't think that type of role is there for him on this Cavs team. I think that he's a good depth piece, and I think the Cavs did very well. And I think this is a good move to really put a bow on their offseason. And the other thing that this move tells me is Jaylen Tyson and Craig Porter Jr. are going to have an opportunity. That, I think, is the thing that is being said. And I know, and I want to talk about Jaylen Tyson a little bit coming up because he was mentioned by Kenny Atkinson specifically yesterday. And I want to talk about those comments coming up in the next segment. But I think that this is a move that puts some faith in Jaylen Tyson. It puts a little bit of faith in Craig Porter Jr. because from what we heard yesterday, I think it's fair to say Darius Garland is not going to be available to start the season. We don't know when Darius Garland is going to be available. I would imagine it's going to be sooner than later, but if he doesn't play until November, I don't think that should surprise anybody. Lonzo Ball is not going to play 82 games. They talked about having a plan in place for him and ensuring that he's healthy when the postseason gets here. I don't know how many games he's going to play. I don't know how many minutes he's going to play. Obviously, the hope is that he stays healthy, but I can promise you 82 games for Lonzo Ball is not happening this year. I feel very confident in saying that. So Craig Porter Jr. is going to have an opportunity. It might not be an every night opportunity, but he's going to have an opportunity to make an impact on this team. And if the Cavs were not confident about Craig Porter Jr. being able to hold up in those moments, I think that this final roster spot for them, and again, I say final, knowing that they're not going to add a 15th guy, but if they were not confident there, I think that this 14th and final roster spot for them probably would have been used on somebody that is more of a ball handling type, more of a maybe not even a lead guard, but somebody that you could trust to, in a pinch, lead your offense. Obviously, Thomas Bryant is not that. He's about as far away as it gets from that. So I think that this is a vote of confidence towards those guys, because they also, considering, and I know that this was late in the summer, but they also could have gone out and tried to find another wing, because they are going to be a little short there when you think about the injury that Max Strus has and the fact that he's going to miss months of the season. And like I said on yesterday's second show, I would be surprised if Strus plays prior to the calendar flipping over to 2026. So they could have signed a wing, but the fact that they signed a big is a bit of insurance. I do think he can be helpful. And Thomas Bryant, he did some good things in the playoffs for the Pacers last year. And I want to talk about that a little bit in just a second. But if they were not confident in Craig Porter Jr. being able to have a real role this year, maybe it's not an every night role, but it's more than it was last year, in Jalen Tyson being able to be a legitimate part of the rotation, especially early in the season, I think that they would have gone in a different direction with this move. I think this is good insurance. Like I said, Thomas Bryant did have some good moments last year. He did play in 20 games in the playoffs for the Pacers. Now, some of that was certainly garbage time. Like, it's not as if he was an every night player. I mean, he did play, I think, in all of their games, but it's not as if he was a guy that was a staple of the rotation in the postseason. He was mostly playing minimal minutes. Like, he played against the Cavs. It's not like he was the biggest part of what they were doing. He played 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 14 minutes, 9 minutes, 10 minutes. But think back to that game 5 against the Cavs. Thomas Bryant had a big impact. He had 9 points on 4 of 6 shooting. He made a 3. Like, do the Pacers win that game without Thomas Bryant helping them out? I don't know. Like, he had some big postseason moments. Flash forward to the series they had against the Knicks. In game 6 of that series, when the Pacers clinched the Eastern Conference title, Thomas Bryant had his best postseason game. He was 3 of 5. He made 3 threes, finished with 11 points in 13 minutes of play. Like, that is a game that they might not win if not for Thomas Bryant stepping up. Now, I don't know that the Cavs are in a situation, and the Pacers, I think, are similar to this last year. Like, when they traded for Thomas Bryant, I don't know that they envisioned him needing to be this postseason hero. And I can assure you that is not the way the Cavs envision this. But I do think having somebody that, one, is going to be able to fill that role, you can trust to be a good backup, has been around a lot of good coaches, has been around a lot of good situations, has been on good teams too, because this is a guy that played in Miami under Eric Spoelstra. Obviously, Rick Carlisle is a very, very good coach. So he's been part of good programs. Now, it's not as if his entire career, like, he spent a lot of years in Washington, and that's not the best, but he was also in Denver, obviously a very, very good team to be on. I believe that was he won a championship in Denver. So they are adding championship experience. And it's not like Thomas Bryant was a big part of that championship team, but they are adding somebody who has a lot of postseason experience, which I do look at and say that's a very important thing to have at the end of your bench. Again, I wouldn't expect Thomas Bryant to go out and be a team leader. I wouldn't expect that to be the case, but he has been there. He's had moments in the postseason as recently as last spring. And the Cavs aren't counting on him to go out and play 20 minutes a night. They're counting on him to be an available backup that is mature, that can handle that role. And I think that's a really good place to be. The other thing this move does is this shuts the door on Tristan Thompson coming back for another season with the Cavs. Obviously, they're not going to add a fifth big. Like, that would not be the case. I would be surprised if at this point anyone picks up Tristan Thompson. Like, I think he would have been signed by now if that were the case, with some training camps starting up, I believe today, and for some teams, and league wide next week. So the Cavs have what I believe will be their full roster. They also did, it's worth pointing out here while we're talking about roster moves, they also have signed a handful of guys to Exhibit 10 deals. Killian Hayes is the most noteworthy of them. If you think back, Killian Hayes was a first-round pick back in, I need to look this up, I believe 2021 or 2020, he was a first-round pick selected by the Detroit Pistons. He was the number 7 overall pick in the 2020 draft, and his career has not gone as anybody expected. It just never really worked out for him in Detroit. He was in Brooklyn, played 6 games with the Nets last season, and he's just not been to date an NBA player. I would expect him to be with the Charge this year. An Exhibit 10 contract means that you are with the team for training camp, and then if you sign a deal with that team's G League affiliate, I believe you get like a $50,000 bonus or something like that. So I would anticipate Killian Hayes is going to be on the Cleveland Charge this year. I also do not believe that he is eligible to be on a 2-way contract. I think that his 2-way eligibility is gone. So I wouldn't necessarily bet on him being a part of the Cavs plans. Now, maybe he has a great year in the G League. Maybe he has a great training camp, and in February or March, the Cavs sign him to a 10-day. And like, this could be a great development story, but that's not what I would bet on happening. So that is obviously part of the Cavs plans for training camp, and a few other guys, according to Chris Fedor of Cleveland.com, that will be joining the team for training camp. I believe these are all Exhibit 10 deals. Norchad Omier, who was with the Cavs during Summer League, Tristan Anaruna, who had a very impressive Summer League. I look at him as a potential 2-way guy because the Cavs do have a third 2-way slot available, which is not something that comes with, I don't believe it comes with any tax penalties or anything like that, because the Cavs are very deep into the second apron, and that's part of the reason why they're not going to add a 15th guy, but that's just also having flexibility is something that Koby Altman likes to do when he builds roster. Chaney Johnson and Jackson Robinson are the other 2 guys. So the Cavs roster is complete for what it's going to look like in training camp. And I would circle Tristan Anaruna as a guy that could maybe, if he has a good training camp, he could be the guy that we look at and say, yeah, he's going to be on a 2-way. He's going to be on that third 2-way for the Cavs alongside Luke Travers, alongside Naquan Tomlin, as the 3 guys that can shuffle back and forth between the Cavs and their G League affiliate, the Cleveland Charge. Now, I wanted to get into a couple of other things that I didn't quite have time for yesterday that Kenny Atkinson and Koby Altman talked about at their meeting today on Tuesday. So we're going to do that next right here on Locked On Cavs. But first, today's show brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here. FanDuel making sure that you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer, because right now new customers can bet just $5. And if your first bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use all across the app. So normally here, what I would do is I would go to FanDuel on my computer. I'm there right now. I'm staring at the screen, and I'd click on the NFL tab. No. Not going to do that today. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go on FanDuel, and I'm going to go to the Major League Baseball tab, because something very important happened on Tuesday night. The Cleveland Guardians, guards ball, baby, beat the Detroit Tigers in a thrilling, unbelievable, unconventional way. They scored 3 runs in the 6th off the best pitcher in baseball, and the only time the ball left the infield was when said best pitcher in baseball snapped the ball like a long snapper over the first baseman's head. And now, after trailing in the division by 15.5 games on July 6th, the Cleveland Guardians are minus 210 on FanDuel to win the American League Central. An incredible turnaround, and you could place your first $5 bet right there. And if the Guardians win the division, and that's your first $5 bet, you will get $300 in bonus bets to use all across the app. So if you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app right now by visiting FanDuel.com. That is FanDuel.com to get started. Again, FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. And if it hits, $300 in bonus bets are yours. FanDuel, play your game. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Like I said earlier, you can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else. Make sure to drop us a 5-star rating, leave us a nice review, and make sure you're subscribed because basketball season is here, and you're not going to want to miss these episodes of Locked On Cavs that are coming down the pike. And the guy that I wanted to talk about next was Jaylen Tyson, because he was brought up relatively early by Kenny Atkinson on Tuesday. So if you missed it, I talked about Evan Mobley. I talked about the starting lineup. I talked about the injuries to Darius, Garland, and Max Strus, all that in the second episode that I put out yesterday. So if you missed all of my thoughts on that stuff, if you're looking for that, it's in your feeds already. It's already on YouTube. Press pause right now to this, go check that out, and then come right back to this and listen to the continued thoughts here, because this really is a part 2 episode aside from all the stuff I already talked about. But Kenny Atkinson talked about Jaylen Tyson, and I want to read his quote verbatim because this, I think, goes along a lot with what I've been saying. Said, Jaylen Tyson has been, we keep saying his NBA skill is how hard he plays every possession, and that's kind of like role players in this league. And he's a young guy, so he's still a role player. That's kind of what you have to do. So he's checking that box. I think he's had a phenomenal offseason. I'm really excited. Like, I want the games to start now so we can get a real feel for where he is. But my gut says he's going to be a real contributor on this team. So when you pair these comments from Kenny Atkinson about Jaylen Tyson with one, the summer league performance that he had. So let's rewind back to July. And Jaylen Tyson played 3 games in summer league. He was, for the most part, very impressive. Now, of course, he is in a different role on the summer league Cavs than what we can expect him to be on for the real Cavaliers, but he did a lot of things well. He scored the basketball well. I thought he was making plays for others in a very impressive way. He looked the part. Like, he looked like somebody that as a second-year summer league player did not belong. And that is the nicest thing you can say about a second or third year player at summer league, is that, yeah, you're too good to be on the floor right now with everybody else that's out there. And that is what Jaylen Tyson was. And that's a very important thing to think about as you look forward to what his role could be, whether or not he has minutes in the rotation. And Kenny stressed competition when talking about the starting lineups, which happened before these comments on Jaylen Tyson. And I don't think that minutes are just going to be given to Jaylen Tyson, but I also map out the rotation. And I think, okay, your starting 5 early-ish in the season will start to include Darius, Garland. So you've got Garland, Mitchell, Mobley, Allen, and I'm going to pencil in DeAndre Hunter as well. You've got those 5 off the bench. Lonzo Ball, Sam Merrill is going to play. Larry Nance Jr. is going to play. Dean Wade is probably going to play. And then you've got room for Jaylen Tyson right there. And there are going to be nights where maybe Dean Wade's not available, or maybe Jaylen Tyson fits the matchup better, or maybe Lonzo Ball, Darius Garland not available, and Jaylen Tyson can certainly pick up some of the slack as far as the playmaking and connector stuff goes that those guys can bring to the floor. And I also think the fact that he is a very good rebounder is one of the things that should earn him minutes. Now, he's not a perfect player. He certainly needs to get better offensively. He needs to become a better shooter. Those are the things that can keep him in the rotation. But I look at everything that he's done so far in his career, and I looked at what he's done in the opportunities, and albeit limited opportunities, that he had last year with the Cavs. I think that this guy works so hard, and he wants to do the little things well. He looks the part. Like, he fits in. And last year, I think he came into things expecting not to have a role handed to him, but expecting to be able to earn a role. And I think the Cavs expected him to be able to earn a role. But when you win 64 games, that means you really don't have holes in your roster. Like, we know what happened in the postseason, and that's a different story for a different podcast. But when you are that successful in the regular season, it's hard to look at somebody and say, yeah, you're not doing enough. Like, how could Kenny Atkinson realistically last year, and even before the trade, like, he can't look at Karis LeVert and say, yeah, Jaylen Tyson's cutting into your minutes. He couldn't look at Isaac Okoro when he was healthy, because he was very good when he was healthy, particularly before the shoulder injury in December. But he couldn't look at him and say, yeah, Jaylen Tyson's going to cut into your minutes, despite the fact that we're 34-6 right now. Like, that's just not a realistic thing. When your team is that good, it's hard to make changes. It is hard for guys to earn playing time because it means everyone that is playing is doing really, really well. And this year, I think there is more opportunity because the Cavs don't have quite as much depth as they did last year. Last year, they had 11 guys that were legitimate NBA rotation players. And this year, I look at it and Jalen Tyson is unproven. I'm not sure that Thomas Bryant is quite there. Obviously, Craig Porter Jr. is a little bit unproven. And you just think, okay, how many guys do they have right now that are legitimate NBA rotation players? Because you can go through, as I did, the starting lineup, which obviously all those guys are legitimate NBA rotation players. I think when they are fully healthy, you can name 10 because you can go the starting 5 plus Max, Lonzo Ball, Sam Merrill, and Larry Nance Jr. Right? And Dean Wade. So you can get to 10. But Max is not going to be healthy to start the season. He's going to, as they said, he's going to miss months at the start of the season. So that puts them at 9. I think there's room for Jalen Tyson. I think in training camp, he's going to earn a role. And that is a storyline that I'm very, very interested to follow when the team gets down to Sarasota next week. I think that's going to be a very interesting thing. It's going to be a good subplot. And I think the best thing that Jalen Tyson can do is earn a role in training camp. And then when Max Strus comes back, because of course he will eventually be back and he will help out the team. When that happens, I think then it becomes, well, we still have to find a way to get Jalen Tyson minutes. I think that'd be the best thing for him. Now, there was one other thing I needed to talk about, and it's what this offseason was, because Kenny Atkinson had a very, very high opinion of what the Cavs did this offseason. I want to talk about Larry Nance Jr. I want to talk about Lonzo Ball. We'll do that next right here on Locked on Cavs. Thank you again for making Locked on Cavs your first watch today and every day. If you are watching along on the show on YouTube, do us a favor right now. Hit that thumbs up button for us. Click subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest from us. And the Cavs this offseason, they're 2 big ads. Not necessarily, I mean, Larry Nance Jr. was a free agent. Lonzo Ball was acquired via trade, but their 2 big ads were those 2 guys. Larry Nance, of course, in his second stint with the Cleveland Cavaliers. Lonzo Ball was acquired via trade from the Chicago Bulls. And Kenny Atkinson was specifically asked about Larry Nance Jr. And he said that he did not anticipate the Cavs being able to add him. Like, he just thought that Larry Nance Jr. was going to have options elsewhere that could pay him more money. And Larry Nance Jr. did have options elsewhere that did offer him more money. But the allure of being at home for Larry outweighed what he had to give up financially to be here. Like, it was important for him to be in Cleveland, to be in this situation, be able to contend for a championship. The Cavs were able to offer, despite the fact that they could not be the most lucrative on the market, they were able to offer the best situation for him. And when you're at the point in the career that Larry Nance Jr. is at, where he wants to win a championship, obviously being from here, having already played here, the history his family has with this organization, like, those things just cannot be paralleled by any other organization. So that is something that I do feel tipped the scale for him to come back to Cleveland. And Kenny talked about that. And he said he was so excited when the news came through, because last year he had a phenomenal year before he ended up with an injury. He only played, I believe it was 24 games, but he had a great 24 games. And he can do it on both ends, which is something I've talked about all summer. The fact that now the Cavs don't have guys that can be played off the floor. Like, their role players are all, for the most part, pretty strong 2-way guys. Larry Nance is part of that. The uptick in 3-point shooting that he had, where he shot, I believe it was 44%. Again, limited sample size because he only played 20 plus games, but doing all of that stuff. And I do think one of the underrated things, and I'm guilty maybe of not talking about this frequently enough, one of the underrated things with Larry Nance is the playmaking aspect of his game. And no one's going to compare him to Nikola Jokic, and like, he's not the greatest passing big in the world. And I don't even think he's as good as Evan Mobley. But what I think is really important about his playmaking side of things is he's a quick decision maker. The ball's not going to get sticky with him. And I think that matters a lot, especially when you're a third big, because when he's on the floor, there's no reason to anticipate the offense being anything other than incredibly smooth. And I think that is a really, really good thing for the Cavs. And Kenny also talked about Lonzo Ball. And I have been telling you guys all summer, I think that Lonzo Ball is going to be one of Kenny Atkinson's maybe favorite players that he has ever coached. Kenny told a bit of a story about when they've been in the gym over the past week or so, 10 days, whatever it's been, about Lonzo giving suggestions to Kenny about different things like schematically that they could do both offensively and defensively. And those things were accepted by Kenny. And, players make those types of suggestions all the time because they're the ones out there on the floor. And I think with Kenny, when it comes from a point guard specifically, because he was somebody who once upon a time played point guard in college, like he just has, I think, a special relationship with guys that play that position. You look at, I think he has a great relationship with Darius Garland. I expect him to have a great relationship with Lonzo Ball. He got the very best out of D'Angelo Russell in Brooklyn back when he was the head coach there, and D'Angelo made an all-star team for the Nets. So I look at that and say he's got a good relationship with that type of player. And I think Lonzo is such a cerebral player. He is, a very good defender, which is going to be something that Kenny is going to love, but he's also going to notice things. And he's also going to be a guy that can help the Cavs, I think, in a lot of different ways. And then the other thing about Lonzo that was brought up was, of course, and I'm sorry, I did not do my contractually obligated statement, but all of this is if Lonzo Ball is healthy. Okay, we got that out of the way. And Kenny talked about that. And he said that they have to have a smart plan in place. And to me, that says Lonzo Ball not playing 82 games. And there's no reason for Lonzo Ball to play 82 games. There is no reason, honestly, for any player on this roster to play 82 games. Jared Allen did it last year, and he can say that he did it. I don't think he should do it again. Jared Allen should not play 82 games this year. I think there were nights where he was bad because he was tired, because he was playing too much. I don't think he should play 82 games again. I don't think Evan Mobley should play 82 games. Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland obviously won't. Lonzo Ball, go up and down the list. There's not a guy on this roster that I look at and say that guy should play every single night. And Lonzo Ball is at the top of that list. But they talked about having to have a good plan in place because he needs to be healthy for the postseason. That to me says he's not playing all 82 games. But he also talked about how good Lonzo is defensively. And we just, as a basketball society, don't have a great way to quantify how good somebody is defensively. There are some advanced metrics you can look at, but trying to statistically evaluate defense just lacks context. You can be a high steals guy, but that also might mean that you take a lot of risks and give up a lot of points because you're always going for steals. Maybe you have 2.5 steals a game, and that's great. But maybe you have 2.5 steals a game on what are 6 attempts at a steal. That might not be as good. So I look at that and say, yeah, it's hard to quantify. But Lonzo, I think, does a good job of, one, knowing when to take those risks. He is a high steals guy, and that is something that they brought up. But I also do think Lonzo can bring a more aggressive defensive mindset, because it's not as if that your defense should be risk-free. I do think that, and I think DeAndre Hunter is a perfect example of this, because he is thought of as a good defender, and he is a good defender, certainly in my opinion, and I think in the opinion of many guys across the NBA. He's a good defender. And I'm fascinated actually to see if this part of his game changes, but he's never really been a high steals or high blocks guy. He has been more of a fundamentally good defender that you're going to be able to get a shot up, but it might not be a good shot, but he's not going to over pursue a pass and go for the steal. That's just not going to be his game. And I think part of that was playing in Atlanta with some maybe not so great defenders behind him. And I am very interested to see how much that changes in Cleveland, having a full training camp and just being used to playing with Evan Mobley and Jared Allen. Like, I think that is something that could be different about his game. But Lonzo is a little bit more aggressive. And I think that the Cavs have some room to be a little bit more aggressive because it, one, will get them out in space a little bit more frequently. I think this is a team that should thrive in transition. I just think ultimately they should be able to create a little bit more defensive chaos than they did last year. And I think that Lonzo Ball could be part of that. I think he could be a very big part of that. And as for DeAndre Hunter, I know I talked about this a little bit yesterday, but Kenny Atkinson called him the best player the Cavs have had this summer, which just reminds me so much of Koby Altman saying that Ty Jerome was the MVP of September last year. And that obviously proved true for Ty. And I think after Tuesday, and I was going into this with the expectation that DeAndre is going to start, and I think he should have a pretty good year, considering all the things I just mentioned about like comfortability and stuff. But my expectations for him, because of that comment, like that comment holds weight with me. My expectations for DeAndre Hunter have gone up a little bit because of what they said about him on Tuesday. Now, that's going to do it for today's show. Tomorrow's show, Greg Swartz of Bleacher Report going to stop by. We recorded this on Monday night, so we don't have comments from Koby and Kenny beforehand. Like, we don't know what they said when we recorded this, but it's a very fun episode with Greg. We talk a lot about Evan Mobley in particular, because he's somebody that is, I think, going to take a leap. We talked about him a lot. We talked about our most interesting player too. And I thought he had a very good answer there. So it's a great conversation you don't want to miss. And then on Friday's show, because it is the final show before training camp gets here. Media day is Monday. Monday night, I'm flying to Sarasota for Cavs training camp that begins on Tuesday. So Friday is like the last real off-season show, if you will. That means it's going to be a mailbag. Anything goes. If you've got questions, you can drop them in the comments on YouTube right now. You can send them my way on social media, or you can email me at locavsmailbag@gmail.com. That email address is also in the show description, wherever you get your podcast, or on YouTube as well. So thank you for making today's edition of Locked On Cavs your first listen. If I could give you a recommendation for your second listen of the day, it would, of course, be Locked On Guardians. Guardians with a thrilling win last night over the Tigers. They are in first place in the American League Central. It's amazing to say. After trailing by 15.5 games in July, they're now in first place. Go check out what Jeff and Justin have to say, because I am sure that today's episode is going to be an all-timer. So go check out Locked On Guardians. Make them your second listen of the day. If you are a Guardians fan, or, if you're not, I'm sure it's going to be a great podcast anyway. So you might want to just check it out. But thanks for making today's show your first listen. You can find us anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else. And if you're watching on YouTube, as we get out of here, do us a favor. Hit that thumbs up button for us. Click subscribe. Hit that notification bell. And I'll be back tomorrow talking more about the Cleveland Cavaliers.